Good morning to everyone. I hope you had good meditation and good morning this morning. As contrary to me, I've been preparing this PowerPoint presentation. Anyway, I believe you won't be able to see much on the screen. So I will try to talk slow, and if there is anything too important to see on the screen, I'll try to emphasize it. I have quite a lot of time, so I'll go slowly through my presentation. The title is, as you can see, Bridging Science and Spirituality. Similar talk I had last year, but this year I will repeat certainly some facts that are relevant to science, but I will give quite a lot of new things. I'm university professor in physics who retired last year, so I am now an independent researcher. I managed to get a research grant to work on this subject of prana, and which gives me some freedom to travel and to explore the world and the subject. Otherwise, I'm originally from Croatia, but used to work in Singapore for 10 years, in Australia for some years as well, in Sydney, Australian Nuclear Science and Technology Organization, Amsterdam 5 years, in America, state north and south. So I basically work on all continents as physicist. As you will see from this is my notes. I've been in this field of nuclear physics. Nuclear physics is my pet subject. I've been in this field for nearly 30 years and published quite a number of papers, scientific papers, over 100. But at this stage of my life, I sort of changed the paradigm, I changed the lifestyle, and I made a big shift towards spirituality and towards so-called paranormal phenomena. There were a number of reasons which led to this. I was guided by my heart, and my heart was telling me sometime many years ago to sail around the world. I'm a big fan of sailing. So when I was grown up, when I had like the magic number 49, it's 7 times 7. You know that 7 is a very important number in our life. Our life usually goes in cycles of 7. So when you reach 7, when you hit 7 times 7, it's 49, then usually the change happens. And as far as I know, in India, many men at that age leave the house and they go to the caves, their caves, and they explore the spiritual world. I didn't know about that, but it did happen. Exactly at that year, when I was 49, I bought a big yacht, sailing yacht, and I sailed around the world for 3 years with family, friends. And this changed my life totally and my perspective. As you can imagine, being in the nature like this, on the ocean, in islands and Pacific, communicating with people who are free, who don't read news, who are detached from this matrix of race threat, I gain my freedom and I gain my insight into a new dimension, a new life. I was so energized by coming back from this sailing around the world that I thought I have enough energy to come back to Croatia and help my local university in town of Rijeka to set up Science and Technology Park. That was quite an interesting and very challenging adventure, which cost me a lot of energy and a lot of struggle. I struggled with the corruption. I didn't expect so much corruption at the university, in our government. I wanted to change that. I wanted to tell them that this is not the way to go, blah, 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 you know, things that I learned in Singapore and Holland and all these countries that are much advanced on the social or consciousness level. But there was no way. I mean, fighting the windmills, it was a losing battle. I hit the wall. I fell sick. I had all kinds of problems in 2010. I was about to get a cancer and all these things that you attract when you are under huge stress. For 2 years being under huge stress, it produced results that are not very beneficial. So then I incidentally, as you know, synchronicities, I incidentally discovered theta healing, and theta healing saved my life. I was introduced to Vajana Steibel, who is the founder of theta healing. She pulled me out to United States, and I was doing theta healing trainings, basic, advanced, and teacher trainings for nearly 3 months. And that helped me a lot. I totally turned my life upside down. It was an amazing journey. And since then, I decided to slow down on science, even though I was still working as a full professor at the university, but I was really interested in these matters. I started doing theta healing, but not so much as more regression to past life. I did regression to past life with many of my friends and clients for a couple of years, and it was an eye-opening experience. I experienced what many of you probably experience, the white light going to another dimension, seeing that we are all one, experiencing that on the first hand. I also had a near-death experience, which was also fantastic. I guess many of you were there or have some experience with that. So all this convinced me that there is a high time to say goodbye to my conventional science, to forget what I know and start learning other tricks, new tricks. I thought I'll be doing telepathy inspired by Rupert Sheldrake. How many people read Rupert Sheldrake's books? Yeah, he did fantastic things with telepathy in United Kingdom. He proved that telepathy is real, that it's not wishy-washy things, that anecdotal, we hear here and there some stories. So he did fantastic experiment. I'm not going to explain, but there is a certain proof that telepathy is real. The problem is that we don't know how it works, but this is just a matter of time. We'll find out. So I thought I will repeat some of his experiment, but I found that repeating is not really my thing. And then I stumbled on Breatharians. I did some exercise with fasting, which I call it that fasting. Since I came back to Croatia in 2007, I was fasting kind of intuitively. I start fasting 1 week per year. I would be without solid food, only on water. And then little by little, I discovered Breatharians, Pranic people. I discovered this world, and I thought, wow, this is something that physics should really step on, and it's high time to step on that bandwagon and see what can be done. So the last few years I've been devising a scale, Balancha, which is very sensitive, which can sense the difference in the weight of only several grams. So if you weigh, let's say, 70 kilograms and your weight changed by 2, 3, 4, 5 grams, I will see that on the scale when you are sitting on the scale. Usually the weight is going down because we all evaporate water, we breathe, and we lose the weight. But what I expect is that Pranic people, especially Pranic level 4, as I did talk to some of them, they say they are able to detect when their weight is increasing. They know how to meditate and how to increase the weight, how to gain the weight, like Jasmusin said yesterday. She asked the essence to give her ideal figure, ideal body, because everybody was telling her that she needs a good lunch. And within 3 weeks, I think she said, she gained 8 kilograms. Yeah, yeah. Not for you. The other way around, right? But the point is that we can, by focusing, by our intention, honest intention, it is clear that we can gain the body shape that we require. If we only ask, and if we only believe. The secret is believe. Believe. If we believe, but deep down, not only in our left brain, it's easy to believe on the left brain, but deep down in your heart, you have to believe. And then things happen, the miracles happen. You all know that. So I was on a hunt, with that scale, I was on a hunt for Pranic people who will show, who will demonstrate this ability to increase the weight as they sit on the scale. And I managed to find few. I'll show you now. I'll show you a few of these results from the, I don't know if you can see the pictures. I hope you can. This is the usual graph. You see, when normal solid food eating people are sitting on the scale, they lose the weight. I don't know if you can see the graph. Is it visible? Yeah. So we usually use between 30 to 50, some people after exercising and still expiring, perspiring, sweating. We lose more than 100 grams per hour. Yeah. But usually if you are in a still mode, you will lose like between 30 and 50 grams. Mostly perspiring, your mouth, through your mouth as well, and your breath. CO2 is much heavier than O2. Yeah. So this is the typical, when I sit, for example, on the scale, it will look like this, or like this. People who are in meditation and who are, these guys were attending a 21-day process of Nicolas in France. And they were actually in their 20th day, so they didn't eat anything solid except water for 20 days. And this fellow from Belgium, Nicolas, he was gaining about 100 grams increase in 30 minutes. You see this graph going up? His weight is going up, which is amazing. I will talk about this later. According to conventional science, this is not possible at all. No way. You can't produce mass just by sitting or meditating. No way. Another lady, Diane, from Holland, she gained about 50 grams in 10 minutes. You see this? Going up. An interesting thing is that the increase, as you can see here, increase is coming in little peaks. Yeah. I was not sure at that time, is it breathing, inhaling, exhaling, and then the mass is going up and then going down and then up again, and then don't know yet. Was not able to reproduce this experiment. Again, in this, on the second sitting, within 10 minutes, Diane gained 120 grams. This kind of measurement has never been done. Never, ever in the history of our civilization. So as you probably know, in science, things have to be reproducible. Otherwise, nobody will believe. So I am still trying to confirm this. I'm still trying to find champions who are able to gain the mass when sitting on the scale. Because my colleagues, and not only my colleagues, physicists, but also chemists and medical doctors, all people who are hooked to the science, conventional science, will just say, forget it. How can you believe these people? They are cheating. They probably use some Indian magician tricks and things like that. Yeah. David also. David was able to increase his weight. Okay. So this is my proof, which is not enough. What we want to do during this Pranic World Festival, and Nicholas provided fantastic facilities, which I'm very, very thankful to him, from doing measurements here under this olive tree 3 years ago. And then second year, we were doing measurements in the garage. Now we are finally upgraded to the whole floor in the small house downstairs. So I have now 2 scales, which are very accurate, precise, and very sensitive and stable. Those that I used 2 or 3 years ago were not so stable, and I was not sure, is this the artifact of the scale, or is this really the weight increasing? So what we are going to do is measure volunteers who think that they know how to gain the weight 10, 20 grams, 50 grams, 150, 1 kilo, whatever, within a meditation session, 15 minutes, half an hour, 1 hour. You can sit as long as you like. You can even sleep on it. This one of the scale is suspended, and we can put a mattress, and if somebody wants, he or she can sleep on that mattress and spend the whole night, and we see if prana is maybe providing some weight during the night. Right. The other scale is for shorter term measurements, and it will be one kind of measurements that we did last year. It was very successful, was weighing people before and after the walk around the hill. So we walk in a group very slow so that there is no perspiring. You don't lose mass through evaporation. Takes about half an hour, and we weigh people before going on the trip and after. And those who are in the process, or those who eat very little solid food, so level 3, they indeed lose very, very little mass. They lose like 10, 20 grams or less. Solid food people eating solid food eating people, they lose 100, 150 grams. So it's a significant difference. And this is something I remember Galina was telling me last year that when she goes through the walk, or for the walk in the forest, she sometimes gain a kilo or 2, isn't it? You can gain, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I wish she will be able to reproduce that. Yeah. Okay, so this is about the measurements. Now I go back to science and how scientists accept or not accept, and what are the development on this in this arena in the last 10, 20 years. The subject is quite extensive, so I will use my notes as a reminder. The first question is, every scientist, I mean, I talk to my colleagues everywhere, on all continents about this. Most of them, 99, even my very good friends, they were polite and they say, Ivo, are you sure? You want to do that? You will ruin your career. Yeah. And that's the answer I got in Australia, in Singapore. I knocked on many doors asking for research grant and ability to do the research at the universities. No way, no way. In Canada, in United States, everywhere. Wherever I go, I ask gently, nicely, slow, with introduction around the lunch. It doesn't help. Doesn't help. If they can't measure it, they don't believe. It does not exist. It's, as you know, all physical laws have to be, we have to be able to reproduce them anytime, everywhere, anywhere in the universe. Every law has never been broken. They can be upgraded, but not broken. But there are things, I mean, scientists are open, some of them are open. They know that things do change as we develop, as humanity, as our science develop. You all know this is called paradigm. We know that there have been many changes of paradigm throughout the history of the world. I will talk about the paradigm in a minute. So prana cannot be measured, cannot be touched. The same is with so-called life force. Chemists, biologists have been talking about life force for centuries. We all know that we are alive. Cells are alive, bacteria are alive, viruses are alive. But we don't know what is the difference between me here talking and me dead in a minute. If I die in a minute, or any of us, we are physically the same. For physicists, chemists, biologists, we are exactly the same as a minute before. But this last breath took something out of our body. What is this something? We call it life force, but we don't know how to describe it. We don't know where it is. Some of you good meditators, you know what it is. But scientists are not meditators, most of them not, and they don't believe in these spiritual things and lights and whatever we call it, angels and blah. I do. To my students, those who are open to this kind of subject, I use the analogy, very nice analogy that I will now use to describe to you the phenomena of life. Imagine that this notebook is playing, I am playing, let's say, a movie or a chess or whatever on this computer or any other computer. And incidentally, the notebook fall on an isolated island somewhere in Pacific where indigenous people live who were never in touch with modern technology. They don't know anything about radio, TV, computers, or anything. They see this screen and they see the movie going on. Something is happening, they see people, they hear the voice, they hear the music, and they are fascinated. They say, wow, what is this? The God sent us some science or something. let's see. And then they try it, they touch the keyboard and they see, they play maybe another movie. They discover the games and maybe they play some games with the computer. They start to interact with it. And they think, wow, this is alive. What is this? The present from the God, from the heaven. But then a few hours later or a few days later, when the battery runs out, what happened? Poof, this thing is dead. Wow, what happened? They shake it, you know. Hey, come back. We want to see you. We want to talk to you. No, nothing. And then they start opening. They start to do reverse engineering, try to figure out how this thing works. What is inside? How does it work? How can it be? They start to, you know, maybe even if they are kind of engineering mind, they start to reproduce components, resistors, capacitors, and then they come to CPU, central processing unit, the chip. What to do with the chip? How to understand how the chip works? Wow, this is very complicated. They open it and they see something, but they have no tools to see transistors, millions of transistors inside. Does this remind you of something? Does this remind you of Leonardo da Vinci, who was dissecting human bodies just a few centuries ago, here, nearby, in Padua? Isn't it? I mean, he was trying to figure out how this computer works. And then in last century, we start to open the brain. We start to poke electrodes in the brain. Isn't that the same what these people are doing, reverse engineering, trying to figure out how the computer works? This is what we are trying to do. We are trying to figure out how the most sophisticated device that is called human and human brain is functioning. The most sophisticated device ever developed by at least known universe. Of course, there are probably aliens who are more sophisticated than us, but we are here on this little island and we are trying to reverse engineer our brain, trying to figure out how is it created, who created it. So sophisticated, so smart. We are trying to understand ourselves. This is like artificial intelligence trying to understand how it works. Okay, did you get the idea? So science, as you know, is very, very young. The humanity is about dating up to nearly 2 million years. And then 2 million years, there was almost nothing, darkness, unless we talk about Lemuria and Atlantida, but this is another subject. I'm not going to touch that. But the last 10,000 years is kind of age of us, humans, humanoids. And within this 10,000 years, we developed a lot. But science was developing very, very slow. And the science as we know it, nuclear physics, we know it only about 100 years, 110 or 20 years. Within 100 years, you can't expect that we know everything. We did a lot. Science is expanding exponentially in the last 100 years, since Industrial Revolution. So the advancements are amazing. And our colleagues should be excused for sticking their head into within their blindfolds and not moving around, because every specialization is so broad. You know, if I want to be a good nuclear scientist, I have to specialize. And you have to specialize. You read only one very small, you are within a tunnel. You have a tunnel vision. You don't see the breadth. Germans have a word for that. You become Fachidioten. You know that, isn't it? I guess you know, you can translate that, but it's Fachidiot. It's like a man who has blindfolds and can see only in one direction. You look into one Fach, one folder. Yeah. So it's very real. You have no time for other things because simply not even for the family very often, if you want to be a good scientist. Okay.
I lost my script. Wow. This is going on its own forward. Okay, no, I don't want to skip because there is... Einstein jokingly said once, if the facts don't fit the theory, change the facts. That's what people are doing, unfortunately. Yeah. So what we actually have to do is look at the facts, look at the real things, the real world, and try to understand. So this is the change of the paradigm. I now mentioned few big changes in the paradigm. To change the paradigm, it takes decades, sometimes century. In this very corner of the world, in Italy, in the central part of Italy, few changes of the paradigms were initiated. To name only few that you are all familiar with. You know that for ancient Greeks and for many other civilizations, Earth was always round. They were even able to measure the radius of the Earth. If you know Eratosthenes and okay, can't remember now the guys. They measured the radius of the Earth, and there were two opposing camps, heliocentric and geocentric system. Somehow, during the Roman time, when the Christianity picked up, Church decided that Earth is flat and the system that we know is geocentric. Then the Earth is in the center of the universe. Everything is spinning around us. It took scientists and clever guys over 1,000 years to change this paradigm. And it happened here. It was Galileo, and then Giordano Bruno, who was burnt on the stake for being stubborn. Copernicus, Kepler. But Rome was persistent, and they didn't want to. But little by little, they finally agreed and said, okay, you're right. And Kepler came up with his laws, and everything was very easy and simple to explain. So in the 16th century, finally, we got a heliocentric system. Then it was Luigi Galvani. Luigi Galvani, you remember the name? Galvanometer. Galvani was also living in this area. He was playing with frogs, dissecting frogs, and putting electrodes into his legs, into his muscle. And they start moving. He noticed that there are reactions. And he concluded that we are actually a power plant, that we are electric, and all living beings are powered by electricity. And he was ridiculed, of course. This is what he wrote into his book. I am attacked by two very opposite sects, the scientists and the know-nothings. Yeah, both scientists and know-nothings were attacking him because he was saying something that people are not used to. Both laugh at me, calling me the frog dancing master. Yet I know that I have discovered one of the greatest forces in the nature. So he discovered electricity, and he discovered that there is some electricity going within living beings. Even Einstein was ridiculed for nearly 20 years for his theory of relativity. You know that his theory of relativity predicts time dilatation and length shrinking and dilatation depending on the speed. Nobody could comprehend that. How can time dilate? How is it possible that the maximum speed that can be achieved is 300,000 kilometers per second, a speed of light, and nothing can go faster than speed of light?
until 1920. So he came up with his theory in 1905. And in 1920, his theory was finally confirmed by expecting by Mercury evolution around the sun. He predicted, his theory was predicting some deformation and some inclination of a Mercury path around the sun, and it was indeed measured in 1920, and his theory was finally confirmed. And later, many times, it has never been disapproved. And it has fantastic consequences, which I'm not going into. Why is Pranic living such a big heresy? Why would I be burnt on stakes if I was born 50 years ago? At least professional stakes. I mean, these days they don't burn people on stakes, real, but you don't get admission to any university. You don't get job anymore if you talk too much. So this is kind of a castration, professional castration. Because Pranic people and Pranic living is breaking two pillars of science, of mechanics. And this is conservation of mass and the conservation of energy. These two laws are stating that in the closed system, so if you have a closed system, let's say a glass ball, no energy or mass can be produced or disappear. They can be converted into each other, but these are very special cases, and this is according to Einstein's equation, E energy equals mass times c squared. So if I have, last year I had a little closed system, a little ball, and I put a puppet into that ball to demonstrate. So now you just imagine a crystal ball which has a human inside. And if he or she has enough air, it will live there, but the mass will not change. Even after decay, let's say if you keep, I don't know, a cockroach under the glass bell and weigh the cockroach in time, in let's say a year or 2 or 3 or 5, it will disintegrate, it will dissolve totally, but the mass will still be the same because there are no atoms coming in and no atoms coming out. So the weight must be the same. This law has never been disproved, never been broken. The only thing that happened is what I mentioned earlier, E equals mc squared, but this can happen only in accelerators and in nuclear bombs. For that, you need to break the atom, and to change its mass, you need to plunge a high energy proton or another nuclear particle into it to cause some disbalance within the nucleus, and so that the nucleus will fission or fusion, depending what you try to do. So fusion and fission are happening in only in processes that require a lot of energy. They cannot happen within a human body. This was the dream of alchemists. Alchemists throughout the history tried to convert lead into gold and whatever. And as far as I know, not many succeeded, at least not known to the science. Yeah, maybe some guru knows. I know that gurus like Sai Baba and those avatars are able to produce anything. According to what I read from Sai Baba life, when he was a child, you probably know, some of you probably know this story better. When he was a child, he would just poke his hand into the pocket and come up with cookies and with sweets, and was giving these sweets to his friends, to his mates. Did you hear that? Yeah. I don't know is it true or not, but it's written in the book, so must be right. Well, anyway, yeah. So this is what science is saying. I believe that you all have studied physics at least a little bit, basic physics, and you know that this law is very fundamental, and every physics professor and teacher will tell you this is the second law of thermodynamics, or first law of thermodynamics, and blah, blah, whatever. Well, but there is a change in the air. The field that is called quantum physics is really doing a lot to contribute to the spirituality. And if anything will give us enough room and space to unfold the secret of prana, it will be quantum physics. And probably the new emerging field, which emerged just 5 years ago or 10 years ago, quantum biology. Finally, biologists have found enough courage to sit together with quantum physicists, or quantum physicists came to biologists looking for real challenging problems. And they are discovering a lot of nice, interesting things. First thing, I've been talking about this last year. First thing is that our old model of atom, which is only about 100 years old, Rutherford discovered it in 1910, 1911, so-called Bohr Model, the model that you are all familiar with, nuclei in the center, which is very heavy, and light electrons around. This is so-called planetary system, planetary model, which is still taught in schools. But every quantum physicist knows that it is not correct. It is totally out of, not really fashion, it's still fashionable. It's still, if I ask you guys, you would probably, to draw the atom, you will probably draw the planetary model for me and say, this is a nucleus, nucleus has protons and neutrons, and these protons and neutrons are basic blocks, building blocks of matter, isn't it? All matter is in protons and neutrons. That's what we were told. But no longer. In the last 30, 40 years, quarks are introduced first theoretically. Theoreticians predicted the existence of quarks. And then they were, when accelerators were strong enough, were powerful enough, they were discovered in 60s. They were really measured and found that proton is actually an energy ball. It's not a real solid ball. It's just a vacuum that has a very strong field, just like from Star Wars. You remember Star Wars rockets have energy field around them. Nothing can penetrate in. This is exactly what proton is. It has a wall that is built by field of quarks. Quarks, there are 3 quarks that are building blocks of proton, and they have very strong charge, mass, spin, and other properties that particles have, elementary particles have, and they form a field which looks like a ball, protective ball. Protons and neutrons are very similar in the mass. And for many years, scientists thought that this is like a solid ball, but it is not. And then when you look at quarks, so it's empty. It has only 3 quarks which are floating around, and these quarks, to be more interesting, have no size. They are vortices in space. Nobody has ever measured the size of elementary particles like quarks. Electrons are also elementary particles. No one has ever measured the size of electron. Electrons is not a little ball. It's a vortex in the space. It's if I will be daring and I will say it is most likely a black hole. Elementary particles are most likely black holes. They most likely have all the features of black holes. Or if you prefer artists and musicians, they prefer the other option, that they are waves, they are vibrations. They are vibration in the field that we called quantum field. Nothing in the quantum field is really tangible. When you go down to quantum particles, you don't see particles. You don't see anything. You just see reflection from fields. Electron has a field, and if you want to see it, you shine the light. Let's say you send a photon, and photon will bounce off the field of the electron. But electron and electron will move because they react with each other. But electron does not have even position in the space. It has a probability that is somewhere there. It's vibrating, it's there. But it's not really there. You can't touch it. It's not tangible. You touch only the field. Field is touching another field. I touch this computer, but I'm not really touching it. It's electrons from my fingers emanate field, electric field, negative charge, and there are many, many, many electrons here. And the same is here. There are electrons here. They repel each other, and they can't go through. Again, unless you are an avatar or Fijian or a surgeon, and you can go into the body and repair someone's body. But this is just a proof that we are not real, that we are most likely just a creation of our consciousness. Most likely. More and more scientists are inclined towards this idea. So elementary particles. So according to quantum physics, particles do not exist unless we observe them. Then they kind of freeze and say, okay, I'm here. And then they disappear again into the dark. Heisenberg was a scientist, one of the key scientists in the nuclear physics field. You probably know his name. He discovered in 20s so-called uncertainty principle. And it was very interesting how he came up with this idea. He was studying in Copenhagen physics. And one night he took a walk through the campus, university campus. And it was a very dark night, cold, miserable Danish night. And he was walking along the path, and path was lit by few lights, which were separated by quite a long distance. And then he thought, you see, when I am under the light, anybody who is around can see me. I'm here and there at this moment. But when I go follow the path and I go through the dark to the next path, nobody knows where I am. I can be anywhere. I can go to the bank, rob the bank, come back and continue. Nobody will know that I have done it because I am invisible. And this is exactly what happened with particles. There is so-called, you probably heard and read in literature, there is a dual slit scattering experiment, which is fantastic and nobody knows how to explain it. When particles go through the slit and then they interfere with each other. I'm not going to describe this experiment now because it's beyond the subject, but it's so amazing that no physicist can explain it. They just say, yes, particles have a dual nature. They can be either particles or waves, depending how you look at them. If you look at them, they become particles. If they don't look at them, they are waves. Mystery. So there are mysteries in science which we admit. Another big mystery is, I'll mention it now, it was supposed to be for the end, is the dark energy and dark matter. We all know that 96% of so-called dark energy and dark matter is invisible. We don't know where it is and what it is, where it is coming from. Only 4% of the matter is what we call real matter that we see. So the Earth, solar system, galaxies, they form only 4% of the known mass. What is the other 96%? Nobody knows. My suspicion is that we live in multiverse. It's like a bubble, and this bubble can feel the gravitational field of other universes which are around us. Probably, maybe not. If you are interested in this kind of quantum things, there are very nice books published by another local guy, Italian, Carlo Rovelli. I don't know if you can see his name, Carlo Rovelli. A book like Reality is Not As It Seems, and many other books. I have all his book in my Kindle. Very nice writing, easy to understand, and you will probably understand after reading, let's say, this reality is not as it seems. You will understand what is quantum field. You will know that you don't know, which is a good step forward. So, this is the ground that many scientists are now using as a stepping stone for the new paradigm change. More and more people agree with the old sages who were saying some 5,000 years ago that all is Maya. The world is illusion. We live in the world of illusion. All is created by consciousness. It's difficult to comprehend, but the stepping stones are slowly piling up, and we are doing step by step, going towards them. We call real world is construction of our consciousness, and elementary particles, and to some extent protons and neutrons as well, are to be considered as tiny black holes. Why I am repeating this black holes again? It's very important because according to theory and now the experiment as well, the advantage of having black balls, not black balls, black holes in our body are are many. What is allowed between two black holes are so-called wormholes. You did watch some of the science fiction movies. Wormholes are these days in every new science fiction movie. Wormholes is kind of a cord, a tunnel that is connecting two black holes, and in this tunnel there is no time and there is no space. It is in some magic. By some magic, it looks like the wormholes is skipping through our reality in going and touching the other particle regardless how far it is. This is proven through so-called entanglement effect. Entanglement effect has been around for quite a number of years. Einstein was talking about this and many other physicists. But only recently has been proved experimentally that it really works. Why and how? Now it comes an interesting part. All these elementary particles that we were talking about, electrons, quarks, even protons, all these building blocks have many features. So beside the fields, electric, positive or negative, magnetic, mass. They have also a feature that is called spin. The spin is giving them something what we call rotational moment and magnetic moment. And it's measurable, easy to measure. And the miracle is that we can distinguish between spin. Spin cannot take any orientation. Spin can take only some sort of quantum physics defined positions. And it can be up and down. They can spin like this, or they can spin like this. And the interesting thing is that in the world of nuclear particles, there is a force that is called pairing force, pairing. Particles like to pair up. Spin up will look for the particle that has spin down. Yin and yang. They look for each other, and when they find each other, they form a couple. They form a couple which is very strongly bonded. And it's very, very important force in material world, in the which is the force that will not only put nuclei together, but will also on a larger scale will put atoms together. For example, hydrogen. Hydrogen, as you know, has only one proton and one electron in its orbit. And hydrogen atom, which is now a family of electron and proton, is looking for a pair, for a pair that has a spin up or down. So hydrogen, you will never find in nature hydrogen atom alone, unless we force them to be alone. But they are looking for pair. Hydrogen atom with electrons that has spin up will look for hydrogen atom with a spin down. And they will find each other and they will get bonded for life, unless there is a force breaking them up. And this happens with oxygen, with carbon, or other atoms. They are looking for spin orientation, electrons with spin orientation that is attractive to them. This force is called pairing force. Thanks to this pairing force, we have complex molecules. H2O. H2O is one of the strongest bonded molecule in the known universe. Oxygen and two hydrogen. Oxygen is missing two electrons in its electronic shell, and it will attract two hydrogen atoms. One will spin up, the other will spin down, and will form hydrogen, form water molecules. Water molecule, as you know, is slow, but I have only 20 minutes. Okay, okay. They form complex molecule, proteins, DNA, all thanks to this pairing force. And if you extend this further, pairing force will attract also and will work between bacteria, will work on a larger scale. And it works also, as far as I know, and there are lots of evidences in our world, it works here, in our world, in human world. We also look for our pair, for our soulmate. It's a need of universe that is, okay, procreation, and there is some deep need on all levels. So from elementary particles all the way to the highest in the hierarchy to pair up. And in how do we call this pairing force in our space? We call it love, isn't it? love. Now you know the origin of love. It's nothing special. Every electron has its own pair. So why wouldn't we have a pair? Right. So you can put the sign of equality between pairing force and love. If pairing force equals love, and this lives in every particle, it is omnipresent. So the love, what we call love, and we are always asking for love. We ask for light to come to our cells. It's already there. It's omnipresent. And it's just like the Bible says, the God is everywhere. It is the God, the creator, is the source, is the essence. So I would dare to deduce that pairing force equal love and equal God, the creator, the essence, the source. Without the pairing force, there will be no love, there will be no us, no consciousness, no nothing. It will be just an empty space. There will be no one to observe and to enjoy. Do you agree? Yeah. So this is the formula of God. It's not E equals mc squared, but love is the pairing force. Yeah. Now, I'll have to rush up now. Some of my colleagues are arguing that there is another force in the nature that is often neglected. And I think it's quite important subject, and I will give a very brief overview. Who is familiar with entropy? What is the entropy? Entropy, what does the entropy do to us? Yeah, right. Yeah, the entropy is opposite to information. Entropy is, I will read so that I don't bluff too much, is a natural tendency of all objects to disintegrate. It's a lack of order or predictability. Gradual decline into disorder. In other words, everything that you see around you will one day decay, transform into dust. Even mountains will transform into flat land. There is a tendency that all objects, complex objects, occupy the state of the lowest energy state. Water is falling down the waterfall. Smoke is going up. The entropy is in an isolated system never decreases. It will only increase. That means that increasing the entropy means higher disorder, chaos. It's tending towards the chaos. This is known as the second law of thermodynamics, and it has never been broken, mind you. All complex systems, like trees, houses, living subjects, even mountains, will eventually turn into dust, will be flat, unless we use a lot of energy to fight the entropy. So you can fight the entropy, but with energy, you know. To keep this grass nicely mown, you have to cut it. To build this tent, you have to put some energy in it. You know, we call this maintenance, facelift, whatever. Even we need a facelift. Right. And this is natural. And this is what hardcore scientists believe, that it is the only important law, and this is the law that gives actually to time a sense to time. Time is, with time, the entropy is only increasing. However, there is another group, and there are not evidences, but also Nobel Prize won with telling us that there is a tendency in the nature that has a need to form more and more complex sub-objects, which are far away from the lowest state of energy. Ilya Romanovich Prigozhin, who was born in Moscow, but then migrated to Germany and then later to Belgium and became Belgian citizen, he got a Nobel Prize in 1977 for his work in chemistry. He was a chemist. He worked on so-called dissipative structure theory, which led to pioneering work in self-organizing system. He discovered that there are many systems in nature which have a tendency to self-organize. And the more we know about the universe, the more difficult it becomes to believe in determinism. Because deterministic theory says that everything will eventually decay. And this is the major departure from the approach by Newton, Einstein, Schrödinger, and all other classical physicists. Some scientists continue to work along these lines. If you are interested in subject, he wrote several books, very interesting books. Prigozhin. Here is the name if you want to copy. On self-organizing system. And then a few years ago, very low profile, is coming another term which is called syntropy. Syntropy is opposite to entropy. Syntropy is the natural law that has a tendency to form more and more complex structures. And this is what we see around us. If determinists are right, there will be no us, everything will be nice and round and flat. There will be no trees, no nothing. But obviously, I mean, we see around us that there are many complex structures, including living beings, us as a top. Yeah. Self-organization occurs in many physical, chemical, biological, robotic, and cognitive systems. Examples of self-organization include crystallization, thermal convection of fluids, chemical oscillation, animal swarming, neural circuits, and artificial neural networks. My colleague from Slovenia, Andrej Detela from Ljubljana, wrote a very nice book about syntropy. And he claims that this is all just theories so far. Prigozhin has confirmed experimental cases in chemistry, and he proved theoretically that this is possible. So there are complex systems and nature, but he didn't come to the life. Life is still a step beyond Prigozhin. And Andrej Detela from Slovenia, he claims that he has a theory that is using syntropy as a basic principle to build more and more very complex system. If he has sufficient energy, he made some calculation that in the system that are abundant with energy, like solar, the nucleus of stars, where there is a lot of energy, intelligent being can be formed. Not like us, but intelligent in sense of small magnetic fields that behave like a little computer, and they're intelligent, and they form families, and they are self-reproducible and self-evolving structures, like artificial intelligence within the star, self-evolved. And if this is true, if this is possible, then this is changing completely the paradigm of God, which I believe the truth might be somewhere along these lines. Nature I'm in principle pantheist, and pantheists are those who believe that the God is nature. Nature is so intelligent and so omnipotent that behaves like a creator. And this is one of the possible solutions, that life is created in areas where there is a lot of energy, enough energy to create self-reproducing and self-evolving beings, which then slowly evolve into whatever. Okay, I still have a few more minutes. I'll come back closer to your stuff that you are familiar with, to meditation and this. Last year, after this conference, I flew to Canada and United States for a couple of months, mostly for traveling, but also to attend the conference Science and Spirituality that was guided by Greg Braden and Joe Dispenza, Dr. Bruce Lipton, and Lindy McTaggart. I believe most of you are familiar with these names. And I believe, who read a book or two from these people? How many? You should all read. Yeah, you will find some proofs that are fascinating. So they kept us for 5 days. These 5 speakers kept us glued to the chair from 9 to 6 p.m. every day. It was fantastic. It was really life-changing experience. Or they have conferences. They have a circus that's going around the world all the time. Just go to their website and you will see they have many shows. Greg Braden, Joe Dispenza, Bruce Lipton, Lindy McTaggart, and there were a few other guys. But according to Bruce Lipton, most of you know, we are no longer victims, but creators of our own life and destiny. It's familiar to all of you. Our DNA is not fixed on the day we are born. Our brain cells don't develop till age of, I don't know, 4 or 5 or whatever were we told, or maybe 20, and then they start decaying. Not true at all. We are evolving all the time. It can be changed. There is neuroplasticity, and even our body cells are changing all the time. You know how many cells per second die and are replaced. You know how many? Nearly 1 million cells per second die and then are replaced with almost the copy, the photocopy of its own. Nearly the same copy. If you stay in good vibration, your new cells will be turned into better cells. Your genomes will change. You can heal yourself, not only on a psychological level, but also on physical level. I've seen people, many people who were healed instantaneously. Joe Dispenza is one of them. You probably know that he had a broken back, and he recovered totally. Yeah. And he was right off. For doctors, for medics, he was right off. His destiny was to sit in the chair the whole life. We have about 50 to 60 trillion cells in our body. And these cells are individual cells. These are like small little villages, little towns, or little individuals that talk to each other. They communicate all the time. We don't know how. They certainly don't communicate through nerves. Nerves are only one avenue of communication on a kind of macro scale. On micro scale, they communicate through prana, most likely through prana. How? We don't understand, but they do. Every cell has all the organisms like us. They have digestion system, they have skin, they have in and out systems. They have, every cell is a complete system that can live on its own. And of course, we have stem cells when we get hurt, when we get cut, or when you know, your liver, something wrong with liver, and they cut half of your liver. In a few weeks' time, you will get a new liver. You will be new. So these are facts. And the fact is also what these guys are doing last 5 years. They attach electrodes to meditators, and they found out that all the stories about meditation, how beneficial it is and blah, blah, have solid ground, that they make sense. Not only that they make sense now, we know now that there are various vibrations of our brain waves. You know that when we are in this awake state, we are in so-called beta state. Frequencies are between, I don't know, 12 and 25 or so on. Then gamma is above when you are hyperactive. And then down goes alpha from 12 to 8 alpha state. It's a light meditation state. And then theta. And then after theta down, below 2 hertz is delta state of deep rest, deep dreaming. Meditators can achieve a state that will bring them to alpha and theta and even delta state, and we can now measure this and see the objective physical changes in the bodies. Hormones like serotonin, dopamine, oxytocin, and I don't know how many, there are so many names that biologists are handling, that will change completely our mindset. And not only that, it will change our cells, it will heal, it will do with your body whatever you need. The body will heal itself by producing drugs that are needed. And this is what is now coming as a proof that we are not really what we think we are. Now knowing that your atoms are not solid, and knowing that love is actually a product of pairing force, which is the base of every cell, every atom in your cells, you know that you are fluid. You are not solid like you think you are. You are what all the sages were telling you. You are the light. You are one with everything. This is just a vision that we have, that our senses are creating, but actually we are much, much more than we see with our limiting 5 senses. Those who understand that, those good meditators, they go into the deep meditation and they know that they can change not only their body, they can heal their bodies, but they can change and influence the world around them, the material world. That's why this book, I recommend also this book, Mind to Matter, from Dawson Church. He's kind of compiling all this Mind to Matter. I wanted to show you, okay, I'll show you back. You will realize, and most of you know, that we do by our thinking, but by our consciousness, by intention, we can change the world around us. We can bring people that we need in our life. Isn't it? Who agree? We can bring circumstances. We can bring book. This book, it was interesting. This book, this is one of the synchronicities. This book, I was in Zagreb a month ago. And I was at my institute doing some research with this Pranic thing. And then on the way downtown, I had few meetings in town. But between these 2 meetings, I had 10 minutes of time. And I happened to be just in front of the bookshop. So I said, okay, let me go to the bookshop. The first thing and the only book that I saw in this bookshop was this book, Mind to Matter. Pick it up, pay it, go out. And I never regret it. It's amazing. And not only that, I can show you some circumstances where 10 people were involved. And they all came to the right place at the right time to give me something that I was needing in the middle of nowhere, on the lonely island. Amazing. I guess all of you could talk for hours about synchronicities that are happening to you. So we do, with our consciousness, we are able to change the world around us and bring whatever you need. One thing that I learned in Theta Healing, that Vajana, I recommend to everyone to study Vajana's book, Theta Healing. She gave a structured way to what she called the creator of all that is, to the source, to the essence, and has a very well organized training. Anyway, I'm not here to advertise. What I wanted to say is, Vajana was always telling us, when you ask for manifestations, for synchronicities, for something to bring into your life, let's say you are looking for someone who will love you unconditionally, be very specific. Don't just ask, source, please bring to my life someone who will love me unconditionally. Then you may get a dog. It's like she said, jokingly, So you have to specify. I want a blonde. I want to this size, that size, with these features. And then just leave it to the universe. Don't think, when you ask for manifestation, don't push. If you push, you will never get it. There is a nice metaphor Doreen Virtue is using. She was saying like this: if you're asking for manifestation, this is like going to a restaurant with your mate and asking for your favorite dish in that restaurant. You know the cook, you know everybody in the restaurant, you've been there many times. But this time you are a bit suspicious because your guest is very special. You want really to give him or her a treat. And you go to the kitchen and you stay behind the cook and ask him, have you done it the same way as last time? Is it okay? Will it be okay? And you go every 5 minutes to kitchen and you check with him. And what will you get? A lousy product, because 2 cooks in the kitchen, it doesn't work, isn't it? Spoil the soup. The same is with Creator. If you go there and ask, please give me, if you go to church or wherever every day and say, please give me this, give me that, you will never get it. You have to relax and let go. Once when you are in love, the only thing that you have to maintain and insist is what Erika is repeating over and over: love, love, I am love. I am. Love, 2 words, love and gratitude. Yeah, this is what you should keep, and this is the pairing force that will bring everything into your life, including the bad things. If you focus on bad things, if you have guilt, this is something that I want to say at the end. Also, another researcher, very important. I have a few more minutes, isn't it? 3 minutes, okay. Very, very important. Special gift for you. I even made few copies. Could you please distribute? Only 20 copies are here. Maybe some of you read the book of David Richard Hawkins. Did anybody read Power versus Force? Yeah, there are a few people. Read Power versus Force. A very nice book. And what I like the most is, okay, I'll give you a minute to distribute. You can make more copies. Read what's written there.
David Hawkins created a scale of consciousness, Scala di Coscienza. Yeah. Okay, it goes from 20 to 1000. 20, a very low frequency. Those in spiritual world would associate this with frequencies. We often talk about the frequency. Shame has a very low frequency. You are down, you are depressed. And then you have guilt, also very low. You can read what he wrote about each of these. Apathy, 50. And then grief, fear, desire, anger. You can imagine what anger does to you. If I have more time, I would read one of these for you, but it's fantastic. Pride, all these are below 200. And all these are working in your body and suppressing your life. If you have any of this emotion in your life, in your body, it will suppress your development, will make you down, will make you depressed, will make you sad, will make you, no energy. But then if you go up, you come to courage, neutrality, willingness, acceptance, reason, love, joy, peace, and enlightenment. Right. David was very big fan of kinesiology tests. So you can use, like Jasmuhin is using this kind of test, with your fingers or leaning back forward or your hands. You can use those to check what are the dominant emotions and feelings in your body. Are you flooded with joy and love? Or are you more still feeling anger towards your colleague who screw up your career or whatever? Or you have desires. You see, desire is very low. You see, if you desire and you want through manifestation and you have desire, forget it. Desire is very low frequency emotion. Will keep you low and you will never get what you want if you desire. You have to let go. And grief, apathy, and things like that. So, a very good test to see where are you on the scale. Each of you can perform the test and see where you are. According to David, the global consciousness of humanity is now around 208, which is very good. For thousands of years, the global consciousness was below 200. Now it's above 200, and we are going towards the joy, love, and enlightenment. So more and more, and thanks to the internet. Don't forget to thank to the internet. And to the guys who provide the internet. Thank you, Fabian. Thank you, Nicholas. Internet is very, very important. And one thing, it was discovered by physicists. And another thing, it was discovered for war purposes. Many, many discoveries are discovered thanks to the wars. Yes, like it or not, wars are catalyzers, just like in chemistry. You need a catalyzer. So, like it or not, Hitler did a very good job in a way. He killed many people, but him and many other dictators actually pushed the edges, the borders of ignorance forward, and we see much more now. If there was no Second World War, there would be no nuclear energy, there would be no computers, no internet, no nothing. Sad, but true. Yeah, we go through catharsis. If I didn't go through catharsis, as many of you went through catharsis, you would not be here. Catharsis is the same as war in the global sense. Yes. Okay, that was me. Thank you.